Doctor and Miller trudged up the rocky path, her boots kicking up dust as the evening sun cast long shadows across the valley. After 12 hours in the lab, these solitary hikes cleared her mind. The research outpost sat isolated in the mountains, far from city lights, perfect for the night sky observations her team needed, but sometimes the loneliness got to her. Anne paused to catch her breath, taking a swig from her water bottle. That's when she heard it, a soft, pained whimper coming from behind a cluster of boulders. "Hello," she called out, wondering if a fellow researcher had wandered off trail. No answer came, just another weak sound. And climbed over the rocks, careful not to slip on the loose gravel. What she found made her freeze mid-step. Nestled between two stones lay a creature unlike anything she'd ever seen. About the size of a house cat, its body was covered in iridescent blue scales that caught the fading sunlight. Two small wings, torn at the edges, twitched feebly. "What on earth are you?" Anne whispered, crouching down slowly. The creature's eyes, deep amber with vertical pupils, locked onto hers. It tried to move away but fell back with a pitiful cry. And had studied unusual animals her whole career. She'd catalogued rare lizards in remote jungles and documented undiscovered amphibians in mountain pools. But this looked like something from an old storybook. "It's like a dragon," she murmured to herself, then laughed at how unscientific that sounded. Taking off her jacket, and carefully wrapped it around the injured creature. It hissed weakly but didn't fight her. "I won't hurt you, little one," she promised. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The walk back to the outpost took twice as long with precious cargo. And felt the creature's unusual warmth through her jacket, much hotter than any reptile should be. It worried her. Back at her lab, and gently placed her discovery on an examination table. Under the bright lights, the creature looked even more remarkable. Its scales weren't simply blue, they shifted colors slightly with each breath, like oil on water. "Let's see what you are," Anne said, reaching for a scanner. The readings made no sense at first. The creature's body temperature registered at 112 degrees, impossibly hot for a living thing its size. Then came the biggest shock. The scanner detected metal components embedded throughout its body, particularly along its spine and wings. "You're partly mechanical," Anne whispered in amazement. "Or enhanced somehow." She grabbed her tablet, quickly making notes and sketches. After taking a few samples, a loose scale, a tiny blood draw that revealed a strange purple fluid, and set up a comfortable spot for the creature in her living quarters adjacent to the lab. She fashioned a nest from soft blankets in a large plastic container, placing a heating pad underneath. The creature curled up instantly, seeming to relax for the first time. "Hungry?" Anne asked, setting out small dishes with various options. Raw meat, vegetables, even some dry dog food she kept for the strays that sometimes wandered near the outpost. To her surprise, the creature sniffed at the meat and began eating with growing enthusiasm. Its movements became stronger with each bite. After it had eaten and watched as the tiny dragon, she couldn't help thinking of it that way now, explored its container, stretching its damaged wings. The tears seemed smaller already. Was it healing itself? The creature eventually settled down, curling into a tight ball. Its eyes fixed on Anne with an intelligence that sent chills down her spine. This was no ordinary animal. She stayed up late into the night, searching databases for any reports of similar findings. Nothing came close. Around midnight, the creature crawled out of its container and up onto her lap, settling against her stomach with a contented rumble. "Well, aren't you friendly for something that fell from the sky?" Anne said, carefully stroking its back. The scales felt warm and smooth under her fingers. The creature pushed its head into her hand like a cat might, clearly enjoying the attention. And must have dozed off because a loud beeping jolted her awake. Her computer monitor flashed with alerts. It had detected an unusual electromagnetic pulse coming from inside the room. The creature was glowing faintly, a soft blue light pulsing from between its scales. Anne rushed to her instruments, watching in disbelief as they recorded a signal broadcasting from the creature. It wasn't random noise, it had patterns, structure. It was a message, and it was aimed at the stars. "What are you really?" Anne whispered as the little dragon watched her with those knowing eyes. "And who are you calling?" She had no way of knowing that in 3 days she would have her answer, in the form of 9,753 ships darkening the sky above her home. And had spent the last 3 days caring for her unusual guest. The little dragon was healing quickly, almost too quickly. Its torn wings were now fully repaired, and it followed her everywhere, chirping and making odd clicking sounds when excited. That morning started like any other. Anne poured her coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the little creature play with a ball of aluminum foil. She discovered it loved shiny objects, collecting bits of metal from around the lab and arranging them in perfect geometric patterns. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked, smiling as it batted the foil across the floor. The dragon suddenly stopped playing. It raised its head and turned toward the window, going completely still. A low hum filled the air, barely noticeable at first. Then Anne's coffee began to ripple. The cup vibrated across the table and crashed to the floor. "What the—" and didn't finish her sentence. The ground beneath her feet trembled. Pictures fell from walls. Her computer monitors toppled over. The dragon leapt onto her shoulder, its claws digging in slightly as if to say, "Stay with me," and rushed to the window and froze. The sky had turned black, not with clouds but with ships. Hundreds, no, thousands of massive vessels hung in perfect formation above her property. Each was shaped like a flattened diamond, their surfaces so dark they seemed to swallow the morning light. "This can't be happening," she whispered, but the little dragon pressed closer to her neck, its body temperature rising with what she now recognized as anxiety. Her phone rang. It was Tom from the general store in town, 5 miles down the mountain. "Are you seeing this? What the hell is going on up there?" "I don't know," she answered truthfully. "How many can you see from town?" "The radio's saying they're everywhere around your place. Military's counting them, over 9,000. They're just hanging there, not doing anything." "And what's at your lab?" Before she could answer, she heard vehicles approaching. Through her window she saw black SUVs and military Humvees racing up the dirt road to her outpost, kicking up clouds of dust. The little dragon hissed, its scales flashing warning colors of red and orange. "I'll call you back, Tom," and said, hanging up as the first vehicles screeched to a halt outside. Men in suits and military uniforms poured out, surrounding her building. A woman in a dark suit approached her door first, knocking firmly. "Dr. Miller? This is Agent Winters with Homeland Security. We need to speak with you immediately." And opened the door, the dragon now hidden inside her lab coat pocket. "What's happening?" "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," Agent Winters said, her eyes darting around the room looking for something. "National security matter." A soldier pushed forward. "Ma'am, have you found anything unusual in the past few days?" "Anything? Not from around here." The dragon squirmed in her pocket and fought to keep her expression neutral. "Why are those ships here? What do they want?" "We were hoping you might have some insight," Agent Winters replied, her voice tight. "They appeared 3 days ago in orbit, then this morning moved into position, all of them, directly centered on these coordinates." A deafening sound cut through the air like metal tearing against metal. Everyone covered their ears, even the trained soldiers flinching at the noise. "They're doing something," someone shouted, and pushed past the agents and ran outside. The central ship, larger than the others, was changing. A section of its underside opened, revealing a glowing blue interior. The light pulsed in a pattern that felt strangely familiar. It matched the rhythm of the signals her dragon had been sending. "Dr. Miller, get back inside." Agent Winters grabbed for her arm but shook her off. "They're not here to attack," she said, though she had no logical reason to believe this. "They're looking for something." From the glowing opening, objects descended, 7 of them, each roughly humanoid but nearly 10 feet tall. They wore armor that seemed to bend light around them, making them difficult to focus on directly. They touched down on her front lawn, crushing the small garden she'd planted last spring. Soldiers raised weapons. Agents shouted into radios. The local sheriff, who had just arrived, simply sat down on the ground, muttering prayers, and felt the dragon squirm free from her pocket. Before she could grab it, it climbed to her shoulder, now glowing brightly enough that everyone turned to stare. The 7 armored figures moved in perfect unison, walking directly toward Anne. They stopped 10 feet away. The center figure raised a hand and a voice boomed out, not in the air but somehow directly inside everyone's heads. "We have tracked the Imperial hatchling to this location. Return it immediately or your species faces extinction." The little dragon pressed against Anne's cheek, trembling. "What do you mean, Imperial hatchling?" and asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. The central figure pointed directly at the creature on her shoulder. "You harbor the sole heir to the Black Emperor dynasty. Its return is non-negotiable." Every gun was now pointed either at the aliens or at Anne herself. She stood at the center of a potential war with a baby dragon, apparently some kind of alien royalty, clinging desperately to her as if she were its only hope. And stood frozen, the little dragon trembling against her neck. Time seemed to slow as soldiers pointed weapons at the towering armored figures, and the armored figures pointed strange devices back at them. "The hatchling belongs to us," the central figure repeated, its voice still echoing inside everyone's heads rather than in the air. "Surrender it now," and felt the dragon's claws tighten on her shoulder. Then something strange happened. The creature's body temperature shot up dramatically, almost burning her skin. Before she could react, the scales along its spine began to glow with an intense blue light. "It's doing something," Agent Winters shouted, backing away. "Everybody down." Button couldn't move. The blue light from the dragon spread, engulfing her in a cocoon of energy. The world around her faded, replaced by darkness and stars. "What's happening?" she gasped, finding herself seemingly floating in space. Then the knowledge came, not as words or pictures, but as pure understanding flowing directly into her mind. Images, sounds, feelings, histories, all pouring into her consciousness faster than she could process them. She saw a vast empire spanning galaxies. Planets teeming with life forms she couldn't comprehend. Cities that floated in gas giants. Ships that traveled through fold spaces between stars. And ruling it all, the Black Emperor dynasty. For 10,000 years, they had maintained order across 3 million star systems. Not through terror, but through a complex system of alliances, technology sharing and cultural exchange. The dragon, no the hatchling, was showing her its home. "You're their prince," and whispered into the void. More images filled her mind. A massive chamber filled with dignitaries from 100 worlds. A towering figure, like the ones on her lawn but larger, more ornate, placing a small egg into a ceremonial chamber. Then chaos. Explosions. Betrayal from within the imperial court. A desperate flight. A guardian, one of the royal protectors, stealing away with the egg, pursued through space. And felt the guardian's desperation as if it were her own. The knowledge that assassins would track the egg's energy signature anywhere in known space. The desperate gamble, flee to a backwater world at the edge of imperial space. A world whose dominant species was known to be violent and unpredictable. "Humans. They thought we would kill you," and realized, understanding flowing through her. "Your guardian calculated that humans would destroy the egg on sight. That's why they chose Earth." The guardian had crash-landed, mortally wounded, just long enough to hide the egg and activate its camouflage protocols. Then it had died, expecting its sacrifice would save the heir, by having humans unwittingly eliminate all trace of it. But the assassins had discovered the plan. They knew the general location. They were coming to find any remains. What no one had calculated, and finding the hatchling first. And treating it with kindness. And protecting it. That signal you sent, and understood now. It activated when you recognized I wasn't a threat. The vision shifted. She saw the massive fleet, 9,753 ships of the Imperial Guard, the most powerful armada in known space. Their sole purpose, protect the royal line at any cost. Even if it meant destroying an entire civilization to keep the secret of the heir's existence. "They'll kill everyone," and realized with horror. "To protect you they'll wipe us out." The dragon's consciousness touched hers again. She felt its fear, its confusion, and something else, affection. It had bonded with her. In the short time they'd been together, the hatchling had imprinted on her as its new guardian. The vision faded. And found herself back on her front lawn, soldiers and agents staring at her with confusion and fear. Only seconds had passed in the real world. "Dr. Miller, step away from that creature," Agent Winters ordered, her voice shaking. "Whatever it just did to you." "It showed me the truth," and interrupted, feeling strangely calm despite the knowledge that Earth's fate hung in the balance. "It's not just a dragon. It's royalty, the only heir to an empire so vast we can't even comprehend it." The central armored figure stepped forward. "The human speaks truth. The hatchling has shared imperial knowledge. This complicates matters." "Complicates?" A general who had just arrived snapped. "You're threatening our planet." "Your planet is irrelevant," the figure replied coldly. "The imperial line must be secured. All other concerns are secondary." And felt the dragon, the prince, nudge her cheek. Another flash of understanding passed between them. "Listen to me," she called out to both sides. The hatchling was hidden here during an assassination attempt. Its guardian thought humans would kill it on sight, eliminating all evidence it ever existed. That would have protected the Empire from the assassins finding it. The armored guards turned to each other, communicating silently. Instead, and continued, "I found it. I helped it. And now it's bonded with me. Impossible, the Central Guard said, but with less certainty. It's true, Anne insisted. It's showing me things, about its home, about the Empire. About what happens when a hatchling bonds. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of your protocols cover this situation. The little dragon stood proudly on her shoulder now, its scales shifting through royal patterns of blue and gold. It made a sound, not a chirp or hiss, but a clear bell-like tone that made everyone, even the armored giants, take a step back in surprise. I think, Anne said slowly, feeling the dragon's thoughts guiding her words, we need to talk about what happens next. Because killing us isn't an option anymore. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of military vehicles, emergency broadcasts, and hurried negotiations. And found herself moved to a secure underground facility, the little dragon prince never leaving her side. Through hastily installed screens, she watched as the world reacted to the ships hovering above every major city on Earth. Fighter jets circled uselessly below the massive vessels. Missile systems were aimed skyward. Naval fleets gathered in strategic positions. It was humanity's entire military might, and Anne knew it wouldn't make the slightest difference if the Imperial Guardians decided to attack. In the concrete room, surrounded by generals and politicians, Anne tried to explain what the hatchling had shown her. Their technology is thousands of years beyond ours, she said, stroking the dragon's scales as it curled in her lap. Those ships can destroy continents without taking damage. Fighting isn't an option. So we just surrender? Asked the stone-faced admiral. Hand over your little pet and hope they leave? The dragon raised its head at this, eyes flashing with intelligence. That's exactly what they expect, Anne replied. But there's another problem. The hatchling has bonded with me, with a human. This isn't just unusual, it's unprecedented in their history. Through the mental connection she now shared with the creature, and had learned more about its species. The dragons, though that wasn't what they called themselves, formed neural bonds during their early development. These bonds shaped their growth, their personalities, and ultimately their ruling styles when they took the throne. I need to speak to them again, Anne insisted. Their programming requires them to protect the heir at all costs, not just physically but developmentally. After hours of argument they finally agreed, and was transported to a field where one of the Imperial ships had landed. 6 guardians stood waiting, their armor reflecting the sunset in unnatural ways, and walked forward with the dragon perched on her shoulder. It had grown noticeably in just days, now the size of a large cat. Its wings occasionally stretched, revealing intricate patterns embedded in the membrane. I wish to demonstrate something, and called out, stopping 10 feet from the armored giants. The central guardian tilted its helmet. Proceed, human. And gently lifted the hatchling from her shoulder and placed it on the ground. Go to them, she whispered. Show them who you are now. The little dragon took a few steps forward, then looked back at Anne uncertainly. The guardians remained motionless, watching. It's okay, she encouraged. The dragon moved toward the guardians, its gait becoming more confident. It stopped before them, raising its head regally. The heir appears physically unharmed, one guardian observed. We will take it now and depart your world. No, Anne said firmly. You won't. The guardians shifted, their weapons humming to life. Explain your defiance, human. Watch what happens when you try to separate us, Anne said, taking a step backward. The hatchling immediately turned, making a distressed sound. When Anne took another step away, the dragon's scales flashed warning colors. Its body temperature spiked visibly, steam rising from its back. Stop, ordered the guardian. What is happening? The bond, Anne explained, kneeling down as the dragon rushed back to her. It's not just emotional, it's physiological. Your heir has adapted to human contact, specifically to mine. Separate us and you risk damage to its developing systems. The guardians conferred silently, their armor plates shifting as they communicated. This is unprecedented, the leader finally said. Our protocols do not address this situation. I know, Anne replied, drawing strength from the small warm body now pressed against her chest. That's why I have a proposal. Behind her, she knew military snipers were aimed at the guardians. A futile gesture, but one that reminded her what was at stake. Humanity's future rested on what she said next. Instead of taking the heir by force or destroying our world to keep its location secret, consider an alternative, Anne suggested. Let Earth become its home during these formative years. Let humans, specifically me, serve as custodians while it grows. Impossible, a guardian responded. The heir must be raised in imperial tradition. Why? Anne challenged. Because that's how it's always been done? Look at your history. Has any emperor ever bonded with a species from outside your empire? Might that not bring new perspective? New strength? The dragon made a musical sound, stretching its wings fully for the first time. Gold patterns flashed across its scales, royal markings and new from their shared visions. The air appears to support this proposal, one guardian noted with surprise. Your empire spans millions of worlds, but you've grown rigid, and continued, feeling bolder. You've lost something we humans have in abundance, adaptability born from compassion. We survive not by domination but by connection, by caring for each other, even for beings unlike ourselves. The dragon climbed back to her shoulder, wrapping its tail around her neck in a gesture of trust. Through their bond and felt its agreement, and something more. Oh. Consider what the heir could become with both imperial tradition and human innovation guiding its development, she said. Not a conqueror but a connector of worlds. The guardians stood silent, their programming visibly conflicted. Their prime directive was to protect the heir, but what if the greatest protection now came from this strange harmony with humans? After what felt like hours, the lead guardian stepped forward. It knelt, bringing its massive helmet level with Anne's eyes. Human and Miller, it said, using her name for the first time. The Imperial Guard detects wisdom in your proposal. And something our empire has indeed forgotten. The guardian extended a massive armored hand. We will establish a new protocol. Earth shall become the protected nursery of the Black Emperor dynasty. And you and Miller shall become its first human guardian. And stood on the observation deck of the Imperial flagship, gazing down at Earth through the massive viewing window. 5 years had passed since that fateful day in her front yard. 5 years that had changed everything, not just for her but for all of humanity. Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? Asked the Admiral standing beside her, his uniform now bearing both Earth military insignia and the royal crest of the Black Emperor dynasty. Every single day, and admitted with a smile. Below them, Earth gleamed blue and green, protected by a defensive grid of Imperial ships. What had once terrified humanity now gave them unprecedented security. No natural disaster went unaddressed. No nation dared attack another with the watchful eyes of the Imperial fleet overhead. He's asking for you, the Admiral said. The preparation ceremony begins in an hour. And nodded, straightening the formal diplomatic uniform she still wasn't quite comfortable wearing. Her old hiking boots peeked out from beneath the ornate fabric. One small rebellion she refused to give up. She made her way through the corridors of the flagship, passing humans working alongside beings from a dozen different worlds. Engineers exchanged ideas about propulsion systems. Artists compared techniques for capturing light in different atmospheres. Children from Earth played complex games with the offspring of species from stars thousands of light years away. The door to the Imperial chamber recognized her immediately, sliding open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was vast, with ceilings that seemed to reach forever. And at its center, lounging on a platform of floating metal, was her dragon. Except he wasn't little anymore. And? The dragon's voice resonated both in the air and directly in her mind. He rose to his full height, nearly 20 feet from tail to snout, his wings extending halfway across the chamber. Iridescent scales shifted colors as he moved, displaying patterns that told his lineage to anyone who could read them. You're late, he chided, though his tone was playful. The guardians are driving me crazy with all these ceremonies. Anne laughed, approaching without fear as the massive creature lowered his head to her level. She placed her hand on his snout, feeling the familiar warmth. It's not every day the heir to the largest empire in the galaxy comes of age, she reminded him. They're bound to be a little anxious. The dragon, who now had a name in his own language that no human throat could pronounce, made a rumbling sound that Anne recognized as laughter. 5 years, he mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you found me. And sometimes it feels like forever, Anne replied, thinking of all that had changed. In the first year, Earth had struggled to adjust to its new reality. Some nations had resisted, only to discover that Imperial technology made resistance pointless. But the Dragon Prince had been firm. No human would be harmed unless they directly threatened him or Anne. By the second year, the benefits had become clear. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were easily cured with Imperial medical knowledge. Clean energy technology eliminated pollution. Hunger vanished as agricultural yields multiplied. The third year saw the first human delegations visiting other worlds. The fourth brought representatives from across the Empire to Earth, curious about the species that had somehow charmed the air. Now, in the fifth year, the young dragon had reached the age of ascension. Tomorrow he would officially become the Emperor of 3 million worlds. The advisors are waiting in the strategy room, and said. They want to review the coronation protocols one more time. The dragon snorted, a small jet of blue flame escaping his nostrils. More protocols. Always protocols. It's important, Anne insisted. Especially the changes you've requested. They're unprecedented. Those changes had caused an uproar in the imperial court. For thousands of years, the coronation ceremony had followed the same pattern. The new emperor would take the throne alone, accepting the submission of representatives from every world under imperial rule. But not this time. Let them talk, the dragon said firmly. My decision stands. The throne will have 2 seats from now on. One for me and one for humanity's representative. And felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. You know, some imperial houses are still objecting. They say it diminishes your authority. They're wrong, the dragon replied, rising to his full height again. What they call weakness I call strength. What they see as dilution I see as evolution. Through their bond and felt his absolute certainty. In 5 short years her dragon had grown not just in size but in wisdom. The empire he would lead would be different from anything that had come before. The dual throne changes everything, she said softly. Other species are already requesting similar recognition. Good, the dragon rumbled. The old empire conquered worlds. The new empire will connect them. A chime sounded, indicating the preparation ceremony would begin soon. The dragon lowered himself, offering his shoulder as a perch, a gesture that harkened back to when he was small enough to ride on hers. Ready? He asked. And climbed up, settling into the familiar spot between his shoulder blades. Together they moved toward the door, toward the future they had created, one neither of them could have imagined on that rocky hillside 5 years ago. Ready? She answered, as the doors swung open to reveal a corridor lined with representatives from 100 worlds, all bowing to the dragon who carried a human on his shoulder. The empire would never be the same. And neither would the universe.